And then the growth stage. Now in this stage, it's really about doubling down. You now know what strategies work. You could have some active, but you're mainly going to be leaning in on some of the more passive strategies. Because at this point, you're growing, right? So whatever strategy works for you, you will just continue to double down. And this is where we talk about joint ventures. We talk about, you can have joint ventures running through the entire business, but at this point, you can go out and raise private finance. You can go and start to talk to other people about giving you their funds to invest with, because now you've proven that you're a good manager of assets or manager of investment, right? That you can take funds from someone and invest it in a credible way and make money for that person, right? So remember that it is a responsibility, and you need to take that. So this is why I say in this stage, you're still developing, you're doing a lot of the long-term hold strategies, buy, refurbish. Now you can do the planning type of land development, sort of the larger scale, long-term range deals, because now you're not under pressure to bring cash in. You already have, say, steady rental income coming in because you've done that during your portfolio building. And so at the growth stage, now you're able to sort of go into, say, longer range type of projects with investor funding and those types of strategies that work well on this stage. And so this is where I talk about building on and leveraging. So what works? Remember, at this point, not only do you even know that HMOs work for you, you now know that it's student loans in Manchester that work for you, right? So you're not just experimenting, you actually know what exactly works. This is why you can then confidently go and take funds from somebody else who is not related to you and invest in that, because you already have a proven track record that you can demonstrate to them. So now if you wanted to invest in Northwest London and you had a certain set of funds, then I know the exact property I can buy that will generate the income for you, or can, turn around. So just understanding that, at that point, you already really have refined your understanding of the market, and you have an understanding of areas as well and what works. And to be honest, I don't only have to invest in Northwest. I can also employ the same. Now I understand how to analyze an area. I can take that to another area, do the analysis, and then decide, what, this is my new patch for investment, right? So at this point, you know what works, you know what kind of strategies, I know the buildings that I would buy and how I would build on. Do you understand? So you really understand the nitty-gritty of how your strategy works. Then you double down, and what I mean by doubling down is where, this is very much, I think it's like a casino term, or like those are where you know what works, so you just pile in more money into it because it works. You're not going to be trying to strategize, and this is why I say in this stage, you then can lose some creativity, because at this point you're not trying to really be creating new ways of. It's only circumstances that will push you to go and create new ways. This works already. You already know the areas that work. Then you're just going to completely pour into those areas. Or even if you've gotten a mix of areas, then you're just going to be focused on those areas. You're not going to be trying to look for other areas unless the opportunities arise. And I know big time investors have gotten hit by completely going outside their patch because they just came across a deal. They didn't really know the area very well, and they just went all in. So, this is why I say lack of creativity can definitely stagnate at this stage, because you already know what works. You're not trying to be creative. You're not really in that innovative space that you are in when you are in the first stage. And then, like I said, integrity. So this is the last stage that I'll be delving into, because at this point we're just going into a bit more sort of content. But integrity is so crucial at this stage, because this is what I was saying, where you have to be a good steward of other people's funds, and you have to demonstrate that you have integrity over taking care of people's funds and being able to generate income. And even if anything goes wrong, that they understand that you did your due diligence, you were upfront, and you gave them adequate understanding throughout the entire period. So integrity is so important. And when I say creative, we're talking about you have to be creative in the stage around. So while you may not be creative in your strategies, you're creative around tax, around raising finance, around funding sources, where you're getting your funds from to do your deals and investing. So you definitely get more creative, because at this point you really understand your patch, and it's just about getting more creativity to build more build more channels or build more. What you're trying to do is you want to get away from, say, the normal way things are done, so you can generate more income within whatever space you've crafted. So, so of course, the cons of this is where, like I said, lack creativity, you can stagnate, higher threshold for risks, because, and whilst it's a good thing in that you can take risks, the thing I realized with when you can take risks is that sometimes you can, okay, I'll give an example. Now, when I go look at a property, I can literally walk through the property in 5 minutes and walk out. But at the beginning, I would have carefully and painstakingly ticked, oh, is the boiler working? Or do you understand? So I'm going through everything very, but now, because I'm like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I'll rush and run out. It doesn't mean that I may not necessarily miss something, right? Because I didn't go through that painstaking, but because you've seen so many at this point, you just have a higher threshold for taking more risks, which can be a pro, but it can also be a con in a sense. And then, of course, there's also the fear that you're now investing with investors' funds. If it's your funds, that's your own issue. But if you're now leveraging investor funds, or you're taking on investor funds, then there's that potential risk. Now, question: what are the tax implications of owning properties as an individual versus buying as a company? So this is a very good question around, especially when we talk about if you're going to hold on to that property. So keep in mind that if you're going to buy a property, if you're only going to buy it to sell it on, then by all means buy it in a company. Actually, now, both ways you should buy in a company, as long as you already have some properties. So let me qualify what I'm saying. So if you're starting out, the first 1 or 2 properties, depending on your income, so if you have a full-time job where you're, say, a medical doctor, you're already earning over 100K, example, and you want to invest in property, then from day one, you'll have to set up an investment company, limited company to buy, because from day one, you will always be in the high income threshold bracket, which will then affect your rental and affect everything in terms of the financials running through the entire portfolio. So you don't want to buy in your name if you're a high income earner. If you are like a medium income earner, say 50K, thereabouts, then you can buy your first 1 or 2 properties. And of course, please speak to your accountant, because they will do the actual calculations to let you know at what point it then crosses over to where it then becomes cost inefficient for you to run it in your name. Remember that if you buy it in a company, you're always going to be paying accountant fees for running the company. You're always going to pay tax, but the truth is that there are all these additional fees that go in with buying as a company when you start out that may not be necessary if you're not already a high income earner. And if you're then consolidating the income from your regular job plus the income from the rental, then by the time you look at it, it may not be worth you getting starting off in a company, and then at least you save on the accountant's fees and all the other costs of registering the company and all these other costs that you didn't need to have paid. Now, if you then, let's assume for the sake of this conversation that you were a high income earner, or you already had 2 properties that were in your name, then buying it in a company is quite important, because there's a regulation called Section 24 that now applies to all anyone that owns properties in their names, where your rent is then deemed as income, and then it's taxed, as opposed to, and they don't deduct your mortgage. So before, when I started, when you bought a property, you had the mortgage. I'll give you an example. Let's say your mortgage was £1,000. The rent on the property was 1,200. Then you're only taxed on the differential. That's the 200. This is the difference between your rental income and your mortgage payment and your mortgage interest payment. Let me qualify, as opposed to your entire mortgage payment. So that's a different question. But basically, most people, when you're investing, you start off with interest-only mortgages. Now, the interest-only portion of the mortgage is tax deductible, used to be tax deductible against your rental. That's no longer the case. What they do is they take your high-level rental income, and then they deduct at the back end. So that's why I'm saying that if you're already a high income earner, by the time they add on, imagine if you're getting rent of £1,000, it means that's £12,000 in a month that they will add on to your normal income, which automatically puts you that you're earning much more than you actually are earning, because by the time you take out your mortgages and all those costs, you really are not netting that much. So just understanding, I hope I haven't gone too far deep into